Okay, we've only got a few more waiting to come in. So let me first of all say welcome to the second day of our spring crime prevention webinars. And thank you so much for registering and taking the time to join us today. Just to let you know, we are recording the session, and so that we can then share this with you next week when we add them all to our site, so that we can make sure that you can get those links. My name is Cheryl. I'm the Head of Membership and Community Engagement here at Neighbourhood Watch, and I have the privilege of welcoming Historic England, and I'll introduce you to the lovely gentleman who's come to do a presentation today. I just wanted to go through some housekeeping. Please keep your cameras turned off, remain muted. It's just so that, one, you can hear everybody, you can hear the speaker clearly, and also it helps with bandwidth, so that you're less likely to be dropping off of the call. Please type any questions into the chat, and we will be going through them for the questions and answers part after Mark has presented. Also, treat each other with respect in the chat. It's an emotive topic of ASB and Heritage Crime, and we just don't want people to feel awkward in the chat. Treat everybody with respect. And we cannot respond to individual cases, but Mark will give an overview of how to report, etc. during the presentation. And please note that you will receive links and details and a follow-up email at the beginning of next week with all of the details from all of our webinars this week for the series. What we would love for you to do is either complete our survey if this is the only webinar that you are going to this week, then please complete the survey today if it's your only webinar. If not, wait till the end of the week to complete your survey, so that because you'll be answering questions on each of the surveys. So in that one survey, so each of the webinars within that one survey. So I would suggest just do it all at the end of the week if you are coming to more than one of the webinars. So thank you very much. I'm going to introduce you now and stop sharing. Oops. There. Is it still sharing, Mark?
I'm sharing my screen now.
Oh, you're sharing your screen. Great. So let me introduce you to Mark. Mark Harrison is the Head of Heritage Crime at Historic England, and he will be explaining a little bit more about what his role is and what they do and how you can get involved in your local area. Thank you. Over to you, Mark.
Thanks, Cheryl. Good afternoon, everybody. My name's Mark Harrison. I'm Head of Heritage Crime at Historic England. And when I'm not doing that, I'm a research fellow in the Centre for Heritage at the University of Kent. My background is in policing. I serve with the Metropolitan Police and Kent Police, and I'm also an archaeologist. So Historic England, we are the UK government statutory advisor on the historic environment. We are funded by the Department for Culture, Media and Sport, and we have a statutory role to champion historic places and to help people to understand, value and care for them. So I meet all of the statutory requirements there with the Heritage Crime Programme. There are over 500,000 protected heritage sites and buildings in England, and they're spread across urban, rural, coastal and maritime areas. The vast majority of protected heritage sites and buildings are owned and managed and cherished by members of the community. So I've given you one example there, that our friends and colleagues at the National Trust look after 500. Local authorities probably have something like 20,000. English Heritage look after 420 sites. So you can see the vast majority are owned and looked after by the members of the public. So what type of heritage assets do we have? Well, there are 87 piers, 16 play crosses, 700 odd windmills, one skate park, which was listed a couple of years ago. It's just over 30 years old. 8 sea forts, and I can see 3 of them from my home here in Whitstable. 57 shipwrecks, 440 animal houses, 158 artist studios, 552 oast houses, cheese lofts, and my particular favourite, 2 roller coasters and 1 intercontinental ballistic missile site. So you can see out of that 500,000, we've got an incredible spread of places. And these are just the protected sites. There's probably an equal number that haven't made the list yet. If you want to see where they are, you can go on to the National Heritage List for England. Just type in NHLE into your search engine, and it will come up with something like this. So you can see in the top box, I put in Avebury, Wiltshire, and this has brought up the Stonehenge landscape. You can see the big red hatched areas. Those are what we call scheduled monuments, generally buried archaeology. And the orange area is to show that it's actually recognised as a World Heritage Site by the United Nations. So here's a part of Liverpool, just to show you that those blue place markers are listed buildings. So it's a little bit like, someone said, it's a little bit like a rat. You're never that far from a rat. You're never that far from heritage, and I would agree with that. So why do we think it's important? Well, the Department for Culture, Media and Sport every couple of years does a survey, and the results are very, very close every time they do it. So the last time round, back in 2018, 74% of the adults surveyed said they'd visited 1 or more heritage sites in the previous 12 months. And 94% of those adults agreed or strongly agreed that it's important to me that heritage buildings or places are well looked after. So that gives me the enthusiasm and incentive to do this job. So what is heritage crime? Well, maybe you could have a go at that, put some ideas into the chat box. I will come to the formal definition as we go through, but what does it mean to you? So to give you some ideas, we've got lead stripped off a church roof. We've got plaques taken from a memorial, cannons taken from our protected shipwrecks in the Thames estuary, hundreds of yards of Yorkstone paving from Rochester, a roller coaster set fire to in Margate. Our precious postal heritage is constantly under attack. People digging up objects using metal detecting devices, and you can see some Bronze Age spearheads here. And the one that surprised me the most was 8 granite cattle troughs were stolen from southeast London and West Kent just before the pandemic, and they weigh 2 metric tons each. Here's the beautiful Plumstead Church in Cheshire. Here's the vicar looking at where the zinc guttering used to be. This happened on a weekend where it rained and rained and rained. The church was basically written off inside, and the funerals, christenings and weddings that had been booked for that week had to be cancelled. One of the weddings included the potential ceremony of a blind bride. And the reason she'd chosen this church was she'd known it since she was a girl. But this still gets recorded as straightforward theft, non-residential. There surely must be some way for us to be able to identify these as heritage crimes at point of recording. The wonderful Clifford's Tower in York. Somebody decided to spray can the entire circumference of the castle. We did catch the offender, and they were sent to jail for 4 months, but the damage to the castle is almost irreversible. the wonderful Underfall Harbour, one of the eldest boat building areas in the country. Volunteers brought it back to life. It was a community hub. And this is what it looked like last summer. A deliberate fire by an arsonist who had a history of committing arson. Fortunately, no one was injured or killed. The offender did receive life imprisonment, but 10 of the nation's most precious vessels were lost. And you'll have seen this one on the news. It is an active case, but we can report that the Crooked House did suffer a fire, and then consent was given for a partial demolition, which turned into a total demolition. And in the time that I've been doing this job, I've never seen people grieving for a building. These people are turning up to set their memorials for a building they loved and cherished. I think this one really did inspire the politicians to understand that people do care about the past. Incredible Wellington Memorial. The last place that we saw the Queen on the gun carriage at a funeral before she was taken by vehicle to Windsor. And used by Just Stop Oil as a backdrop to one of their campaigns. This is a live case. These 3 people have been arrested, charged with criminal damage, and await trial. And metal detecting is the one thing that the media are always asking me about. They have a terrible expression for it. They call it night hawking. Well, I just call it theft. And anything that happens on Hadrian's Wall gets international news. And they're now starting to use incredibly powerful magnets to actually bring up objects from our waterways, including live ammunition. These had to be disposed of very carefully by the bomb disposal squad. And here is the wonderful sycamore at Sycamore Gap on Hadrian's Wall. Again, this is a live case. But before we go on to talk about the tree, I just wanted to draw your attention to this incredible definition by our friends at ICOMOS, where it says a place, locality, natural landscape, settlement area, architectural complex, archaeological site or standing structure that is recognised and often legally protected as a place of historical and cultural significance. Well, I think that was written for Sycamore Gap. A tree around about 200 years old, sitting in a timeless landscape that has a Roman wall 2,000 years old cutting through it. Iconic. So what about that definition? Well, the formal definition is any offence. So it takes account of existing and future legislation, which harms the value, and harm in this context means not just the financial value, but also the knowledge value, what it actually means to us and future generations' ability to study. Heritage assets, so we've seen some of those, churches, roller coasters, and their settings, so the surroundings. And we have to understand that we have relatively short lifetime, and we need to leave these sites in as good as or better condition for those that follow. And the definition includes cultural objects, so those things that we find in museums, art galleries. The commitment from Historic England is very strong. Within our corporate plan, I'm tasked to develop and deliver new and innovative approaches to prevent crime and antisocial behaviour within the historic environment. And as part of that, we have a rigorous training programme for law enforcement and heritage professionals. We have a large stakeholder group, ARCH, the Alliance to Reduce Crime Against Heritage, over 200 organisations in ARCH now. And since 2013, we have political overview of our police services in England and Wales with police and crime commissioners. And 11 commissioners have specifically highlighted their commitment to political heritage crime, and the remainder we all work with in some way to tackle crime. We also work very closely across government, in particular the Home Office. So I'm part of the Beating Crime Plan team that looks at handling stolen goods and antisocial behaviour. And heritage crime now forms a key component within this serious organised acquisitive crime strategy. So those crimes that involve the theft of property and the ability to make money from stolen property. So our training program is now starting to develop into accreditation and qualification, which is really important because the courts are becoming very hostile places, and we need to be able to show the court that our teams are really well trained. In terms of guidance, on the Historic England website, we have a whole range of guidance for you to help you understand threats and risks and how to prevent crime using a range of techniques. And of course, we have a long-standing relationship with Neighbourhood Watch. We developed the Heritage Watch programme together in Cheshire back in 2013. And it's now really starting to develop across the country. So one of our newest watch schemes is in Devon and Cornwall. And we have horse riders in Essex, Wiltshire and Dorset. And we're even underwater. So we've worked with chemists to develop a unique approach to marking our underwater sites. So if they are stolen, we can actually place them back to the scene. And I'm a heritage crime volunteer with Kent Police. I'm a police support volunteer. So I help out, and I know forces across the country are really keen to invite people to come in. So if you're a historian, archaeologist, or you're interested, please have a look on your local force website. And working with the engineers at What Three Words, we've now been able to assign a dedicated location code to each of the 500,000 protected sites in England. Now, this is pinpointed to the central part of the building or the archaeological site. So if you're reporting an incident or a crime to the police, if you give that address, we know exactly what you're talking about. And you can imagine if we've got all those assets in a particular area around Stonehenge, the ability to give a What Three Words address means the officers can get to you very quickly. One of the things we noticed was people felt that they didn't want to trouble the police. And we said, look, it's okay to call the police. If there's a crime in action, it's 999. If the offender's no longer there, it's 101. Or you can use an online or live chat, or you can use Crime Stoppers. So we've called this scheme Confident Calling, and we're going to be training owners and managers of heritage sites all across the country to understand how to deal with the call handlers, because these are quite unusual offences, and the training is not covered in the initial training for call handlers at the moment. So if we can make our callers more confident, it means we can get things recorded accurately at first point of contact. We do use signs, but we make them very specific. we use lots of images. And the big one for me is our young people, making sure that our young people are aware of their heritage and what's around them. So back in the pandemic, we didn't know it was going to be the pandemic, but we'd set up a scheme for the volunteer police cadets for a heritage crime module. That was so successful that we asked Youth United Foundation to see if other uniform groups would be interested. And I'm delighted to say that 27 groups have agreed to integrate heritage into their work stream. And for those young people that are maybe not so fortunate, we've developed a program called Rejuvenate. This is a pioneering program that uses archaeology to empower children and young people. Maybe they're struggling at school, or maybe they are in trouble with the police, or in some cases, they've actually been convicted and this forms part of their sentence. We trialled the scheme in Wiltshire and Kent for 2 years, and the evaluation was so positive that we're now able to start to roll this out across the whole country. This will be known as the Heritage Youth Partnership, and very exciting. And this is what one of the young students said. This young lady didn't go to school very often. She now has 100% attendance record. So in terms of policing, we work incredibly closely with the National Police Chiefs Council, and we've just finished our assessment of crime over the last 4 years. And you may have seen some of the publicity in newspapers and on the television. And to stay one step ahead of the criminals, we've developed an innovation hub at the University of Kent, which we call Hawkeye, Heritage and Wildlife Crime Innovation. And this has got 9 universities involved, so working with students and academics, coming up with the technologies and the tactics that we need to tackle future criminality. So one of the projects is using artificial intelligence to help us track down the taggers, the graffiti artists, and actually a return to physical marking. Although things like smart water and forensic markers have been used now for about 20 years, we're finding that we need to show something more physical for the potential thieves, to help officers on the road networks and scrap dealers when the metals come in. The vast majority of scrap metal dealers don't want to receive stolen metal, so we're working closely with them to develop this scheme. And if prosecution is a measure of success, then since we've been going, which is 2011, there were no prosecutions for people using metal detectors and stealing. Well, this operation in Herefordshire led to the arrest and conviction of 4 men who were serving between them 24 years in jail, with a confiscation order of £1.2 million. And for those people intent on stealing our stone, lead from churches, or metals from our protected shipwrecks, again, these people are being sentenced and sent to jail. That's it from me. If there's any questions, I'll take those now.
Thank you so much, Mark. And we've got a few questions in the chat. So if you can put your questions in the chat, we will get back. We will ask Mark the answers. So one of the questions was that they own a registered ancient monument. Is it automatically protected? Is it a automatically protected site in your definition?
Yes. So if somewhere is a listed building or a scheduled monument, you own the site, but you don't own the governance around it. There's a consent regime. So if you want to do any work or alterations to that scheduled monument, you have to apply to Historic England, and then we liaise with the Secretary of State, who will either say yes or no. If she says yes, then you can go ahead with your works. If she says no, then you cannot. If you ignore the condition, you can be in trouble. If you don't apply for the consent in the first place, again, that's triable in the Crown Court.
Thank you, Mark. And another question is, a lot of people are asking around the training for volunteers that you were talking about. How and when does that happen? What is the process for that, please?
Yep. So we tested this during the pandemic when everybody was at home, and we put together a 45-minute online awareness package. I'll be very happy to work with you, Cheryl, to bring that to life again.
Yeah.
I'll run a couple of sessions in the spring and again into the autumn.
Yeah, no, that'd be absolutely brilliant. Thank you. And a question was, is it okay to put your email in the chat for people, or
yes, of course. Yeah.
Perfect. So we'll do that as well. And also, can you help us find a process to classify a site as an heritage site, especially in our rich history? Oh no, sorry, that was person in South Africa. So I've advised that person in South Africa to contact officials in South Africa to get that information.
There's generally a mirror body in every country in the world.
Perfect. Thank you very much. And also, somebody was interested in Northumbria Force and local councils. Are they connected? Have you got Northumbria on board?
Yes, we have, and of course the Sycamore Gap incident has reinforced that relationship.
Thank you. And somebody was asking about the stats that break down heritage crime. Is there any? And how much crime is down to agendas?
So the assessment we published on Wednesday showed that metal theft is down, but enforcement is up. So the intelligence that's coming in is really good. So those offenders that persist, we're identifying. Antisocial behaviour, in particular arson, criminal damage, graffiti and off-road driving, remains persistent, and working with neighbourhood teams to really deal with that. Metal detecting, so the night hawking, again, that is down by 9%, but the enforcement's up. So the training that we did for landowners, detectorists and police officers is really starting to pay off now, because the intelligence that's coming in is very, very accurate. So we're dealing with the persistent offenders now, and they're going to jail. You know, the courts are quite happy now. If the evidence is there, they will send them to prison. And the disappointing one is that stone theft is up. So we've seen that in pavements, in our churchyards, in our high streets, from our stately homes. What's the market for this stone? One of the things that we're concerned about is that there's regulation for scrap dealers. So taking metal into a scrap dealer, they cannot give a cash transaction. They must take photo ID and vehicle details. But you take stone into a reclamation yard, they don't need to do anything. They can give you cash and no record keeping. So maybe that's one thing for us to look at. And the big ask for communities is, if you're not happy with the provenance of the stone, don't buy it.
Thank you very much for that. And also, is there any work being done around the online reporting tools on police websites with regards to reporting heritage crime?
I don't quite understand the question.
Well, basically, on their online report form, when people fill in that they're reporting a crime, instead of calling 101 or 999, they're doing it online. There doesn't seem suitable for reporting heritage crime. So how would you categorise what you are categorising for heritage? Is it antisocial behaviour? Is it something else?
So if it's theft of stone, then it's a theft. If it's vandalism, graffiti, it's criminal damage. Because it's a national form, to get change, we have to get it changed at the centre. However, there are individual forces that are actually aligning it to local reporting. So, for example, in Dorset, you can report wildlife crime, you can report environmental crime, and the next one for them is heritage crime. So we're getting there slowly but surely. But on the text, if you can include that it's a protected site or building, it should come through to me.
Okay, thank you. And another question was around, is metal fishing illegal?
Yes, so there's a sort of a mythology amongst the magnet fishers, they call themselves, that if something is underwater, then it's been abandoned and it thereby doesn't belong to anybody. Well, that's not strictly true. And of course, the riverbed belongs to somebody. So what we're saying is that property is in the riverbed, it belongs to somebody. If it's a scheduled monument, then you need the Secretary of State's permission and a license issued by Historic England, which of course we would never do unless it was part of a research project. And not only is it theft, but you've seen some of the dangerous objects that they're bringing up.
Thank you. And somebody was asking earlier, remember you was asking about what around heritage crime, etc. at the beginning. And there was a picture of a post box, and there's been some people asking, what was that relevant? What was the relevance of the post box?
Okay, so in the longer form of the training, we spend quite a bit of time on that slide, asking people what do they think has happened or what could happen to a site. So that box, you'll have noticed, had the letters V and R on it. And so it shows it's from the reign of Victoria. So that box has actually been embedded into that terrace in northern England for nearly 150 years. It's been serving the community every single day. It's providing a service and it's a heritage asset. So the thieves, when they steal that, they generally would pull it out of the wall, taking the box and any of the contents with them. Generally, if it's a modern box, they will take out the contents and then ditch the box. But in the case of the Victorian boxes, they are actually worth something to collectors. So they get two hits. They get whatever's inside the box plus the box. And to the community, it's the loss of an amenity. And it's very upsetting. So that one's about what could happen.
And somebody was asking, not much clarity on that, but around what is around what category does vandalising to graves come under?
So graffiti with a spray can is criminal damage, but it's generally called graffiti, but it's classified as criminal damage.
Thank you. Thank you. And
can I ask you a question, please?
Sorry, excuse me. If you can put your questions in the chat, that would be really helpful.
I'm trying to do it because somebody said it's closed to ask a question.
Sorry?
I got a message it's closed to ask a question on the chat.
No, the questions on the chat is not closed.
I've got a message back. Okay, I'll try again.
What's the question, Jerome?
Ask the question.
Yeah, I just want to ask, in the last 2 years, how many successful prosecutions were there about heritage crimes?
Okay.
Thank you, Jerome.
It's a great question. I don't know the answer specifically. but we've had significant prosecutions against organised crime groups, metal thieves, stone thieves. The big thing is, Cheryl, is the way that the Home Office collects the data doesn't make it very easy for me to answer those questions.
Absolutely, and that can be said for many types of crimes, as we know. There's also another question in the chat. It says we had a memorial plaque from a football team over a stone in their local park that was stolen. Reported it, but do not know what else to do. Is this a heritage piece being stolen?
Yeah, and this is why in the definition it says heritage asset, it doesn't say designated. Our view is if the victims or the community feel it's a heritage asset, then it's dealt with as a heritage theft. So hopefully the police there have made inquiries with the local scrap dealers, put out appeals, etc. And hopefully the names of those that are on the memorial have been retained, so we can actually make a facsimile. It's not the original, but at least we can put something back, and hopefully we can identify the offenders. Since 2016, when we worked with the Sentencing Council, if you're convicted of stealing a heritage asset or receiving and making money from accepting a stolen heritage asset, you're liable to an uplift in your sentence.
Thank you. Some mentioned around vandalism, etc. During protests. Is this counted as heritage crime as well, if it's been done during a protest?
Yes, it's exactly the same as any other time of the year, any other event. And we've worked with the Metropolitan Police and the Crown Prosecution Service to highlight the heritage status of those memorials and structures that were damaged in the campaigns and the protests we've seen over the last 3 and 4 years.
Thank you. And a question, do all police forces have a heritage, rural and wildlife team? Wondering how do they direct people to the police team or heritage or historic England team? Thinking of when they're holidaying in other parts of the country, for instance. There's 2 or 3 parts of that same question.
Yeah. There is a heritage point of contact in every single police service in England and Wales, and now Scotland and Northern Ireland. In some areas, the teams are quite big, but it's generally not their whole-time job. So, for example, in Wiltshire, we have 35 trained officers, but it's not their whole-time job, but they've shown an interest and they've been trained. Obviously, we're going to develop that over the years. We put quite a bit of energy to align ourselves to the rural crime teams, but we tackle crime wherever it happens, whether it's in an urban setting or a coastal setting or, of course, under the water.
Okay, thank you. And could there be a crossover of heritage crime with hate crime, etc.? Would this be recorded as hate crime or heritage crime or both?
Yes, that's a really excellent question. And that was the argument that we used when we were working with the Sentencing Council to actually say this is special. This isn't just a crime against any one person, it's a crime against the community. So we actually use those sort of hate crime argument. Now, there will be some cases where it's a hate crime per se. So there might be some horrific racist graffiti put into a synagogue that is also a listed building. So yeah.
Thank you.
Good question.
And also people were asking about how they can access the heritage crime section on Historic England website, so they can get in touch and put themselves forward to volunteer. And there was some And there was some signage around there. Would they particularly on those sites where there's heritage places?
Okay,
Would they have some signage around that?
So I'll put my part of the website into the chat box for you.
Perfect.
In terms of volunteering, I don't have volunteers with me. So if somebody wants to volunteer, then I would put them in touch with their local police service. It's called Citizens in Policing, which of course is the same as Neighbourhood Watch.
Yes, and you can tick on your area if you're on our membership. You can tick as a alternative watch group, heritage crime group. So there is that facility there.
If I could find the chat box, I'd be dangerous.
And also, Mark, somebody was asking about a whole sort of colliery. Is that counted as heritage?
Yes. Are they from Stoke by any chance?
Bolden.
Oh, Bolden. Okay. So we are currently working in Staffordshire at the Chatterley Whitfield Colliery with 400 retired miners to actually integrate Heritage Watch into their amazing 35 acres of colliery heritage. So it's a really big one for us.
And that'd be interesting to see how that works, so that other areas can possibly follow suit too.
Absolutely.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Thank you. Is there any more questions that I've not covered yet in the chat? Be really good if there are any outstanding questions, because it's been a really enjoyable webinar. What I will say to everybody is I'll give a couple of minutes for you to type anything into the chat, or there is some, but also to let you know that the next webinar is tomorrow at the same time, and that webinar is on Wednesday, which is about top tips from policing's tactical lead for vehicle crime. So it's around vehicle crime tomorrow, and I can put the link for you to register into the chat. What I would love for you to all do is let us know what you thought of the webinar today. I thought it was really, really interesting, and it's not a lot of people get to hear about heritage crime, and we're really, really thankful that we've had the opportunity to share Mark and what he does in England regarding heritage crime. And it's a really, really well thought of project, and it's been going for a number of years, and it's just going from strength to strength. So well done. Yes, as described earlier in the meeting, I have added, I've let you know that the write-up for today and the link for the webinars for you to watch it back, and also more information, will be sent to you at the beginning of next week. Once all of the webinars have concluded this week, we'll send a group email regarding all of those. So thank you very much for that. Just want to say thank you so much for coming. I can see in the chat that everyone's saying thank you and goodbye. But what I would like to do, one question is in there. Last question is, has the latest technology been used, i.e. through CCTV?
Yep, we use all of those things. We've also used things like soil analysis and plant DNA to track down offenders. We're starting to use artificial intelligence a lot now.
No, that's really, really good, because it's really, really helpful, isn't it? Using the different technologies that we've got access to nowadays, that we didn't have access but one of the big things that is the most valuable is our eyes. Keep our eyes, keep our ears open, and watch and see if we can report stuff to the police in the right way, so that they are understanding that it is affecting the community, affecting the environment of that particular crime. While I've got on the screen saying thank you very much, we hope you enjoyed today's webinar with us. We'd be delighted to hear your feedback. As I said, we will be sending the link out for the survey. If you are attending any further webinars this week, then please don't fill in the survey today. Wait till the last event that you're attending and then fill in the survey, because otherwise you'll be doing it each and every time and it will become laborious rather than enjoyable to fill in. Want to say thank you to Mark, and I also want to just hear the last words from Mark to say what he would like you to take away from today.
I'd like you to go onto the Heritage List for England. So type in NHLE into your search engine, bring up that map search, put your postcode or your village or town name in, and just have a look at how many protected sites and buildings are around you. Think about, crikey, I didn't know that was there. So when you're out on your walk next time, you think, that's 18th century. That was put up because it was people from the First World War. And think about it, there's over 70 million people in this country. We can all look after one asset each. In fact, we can have 10 people looking after each asset, can't we? Or is it 100? Maybe it's 100. Anyway, it's 500,000 assets, 70 million us, and a tiny number of criminals. So become part of our Heritage Watch family.
Thank you so much, Mark, and really, really appreciate your time today. And again, thank you to everybody for attending. It's been a lovely experience and we hope that you've enjoyed it. If you are interested in any of our other webinars this week, just go to our website, ourwatch.org.uk, and then / and go to webinars. You'll see all of the booking details on there. Again, it's completely free, and we will have another lot of webinars during ASB Awareness Week later on this year. But this week, would love for you to sign up to our other webinars, and I hope that you've taken away Mark's advice and useful information today. So thank you so much. Bye.